I was thinking about you. And if your team feels frustrating right now, if the people aren't aligned, if things keep breaking, and if you're constantly stepping in, helping out, then I need you to hear this. Your team might not be the problem. Your conflict strategy might be. Welcome to It's Time to Soar, getting unstuck with me, Coach Katina. And today we're shifting the conversation because a lot of leaders think they have a performance problem. They'll say or feel like they have a people problem or believe that they might even have a culture problem. But today, what they actually have is what we're going to talk about is a conflict that they've never really learned how to solve, a conflict problem that they've never really learned how to solve. And the facts around conflict is that in the United States, studies show that United States companies lose $359 billion annually due to conflict. And approximately 3 hours are spent per employee dealing with conflict or handling conflict. Turnover rates increase when there's conflict. You get an atmosphere that's a little tense. Has anybody ever worked at a place where there was conflict and it felt like you were walking on eggshells? Maybe there was tension, maybe. And if there was a power play, maybe people were getting bullied. And so when you think about that, if people are getting bullied in the workplace, then there's mental health issues or mental challenges or well-being. So you don't have a positive culture and there's tension and you're not really dealing with people's personalities. You're dealing with the lack of conflict or unresolved conflict, and it impacts performance. And a lot of times it goes misdiagnosed and people get the blame, but it really is how to handle conflict. And that's what we're going to talk about today. A lot of times leaders get it wrong, and here's the mistake that they make. And I've made this mistake. So trust me, I know what I'm talking about. And not only have I helped people with this problem, but I've been the problem. So when there's conflict, sometimes leaders treat it like something to avoid. And those of you out there that might feel like, well, I'm non-confrontational and that's not really my style. If that's you, put that's me in the chat. And I get it that sometimes your personality or your style, your communication style might not be naturally one to want to address, but as a leader, you need to address it. A lot of times leaders might just encourage people to move on. And if you're a person maybe that it feels like it's too emotional or it's too petty or it's something to not get involved with, you might just encourage people to move on. That's not really important. But what happens is conflict doesn't go away. And sometimes people just kind of avoid it or ignore it till it goes away, but it doesn't go away. It can turn into passive aggression. It can turn into disengagement. It can turn into misalignment, and it can cause people on the team to quietly quit. And so that's when they show up, but they're not really giving their all. They're there and they've quit. They've checked out, but they're still there. And you're not getting the work that you need done. You're not getting the participation that you need or the engagement because they have quietly quit. So I want to take a minute and reframe this. Conflict isn't the problem. Unresolved conflict is the problem. And because people don't see it as that, they tend to avoid it. But the truth is, conflict really brings a lot of great things to the table, to the forefront. It exposes us to new ideas. It challenges things that might have been broken for a while or things that we've gotten comfortable moving along, and they might not be the best solution. And so when you allow conflict to arise, it teaches us how to be flexible. It teaches us how to listen, teaches us to see, notice, and understand patterns of behavior. And it leads to solution. One thing that it also does is it allows us to practice communication skills, and it helps us set limits and define barriers. So when conflict resolution happens, you get to pick things apart and move forward in a healthy way. So I want to just share that for me, there's a title or a chapter in my book, It's Time to Soar, and it was Stuck on Being Right. And and stuck on being right, I had a problem. And it is something that I often revisit to make sure I'm checking myself, because it can show up if I don't handle it and nip it. So, stuck on being right, feeling like you need to have the right answers, and maybe fearful that if you don't have the right answers, that people might look at you a certain way, or feel like they might minimize your leadership ability or your skills. Whatever the reason is, that chapter deals with being stuck on being right. And if you think about that in a leadership capacity, sometimes when conflict arises, or when there is something that is brought up, um, in the past, I have felt defensive, like I had to defend my rightness. And that doesn't help resolve the conflict. It didn't help me hear a solution. It didn't help me hear the other person's perspective. In my mind, this is how it's presented, this is what it is. But what I learned through conflict resolution and the hard conversations is miscommunication, misinterpretation, misaligned intentions, and things like that have come out, and we've come out with a healthier resolution. And so that's just an example of the beauty of actually having the conversation. You find out that one thing that you meant came off differently, and it spiraled into something you had no idea was going to happen. So let's reframe conflict. Conflict isn't the problem. Like I said before, it is when you don't resolve it. And I want to walk through the SOAR conflict resolution formula. And it's something that I actually am using now. And I use it with clients, and I think it'll help. We'll hit it really quickly, and if you have questions about it, or you want to talk about a customized solution or implementing this, reach out to me, and let's talk about how we can get you moving through some of the conflict that you might have in your organization. But the 5 steps are: 1, you identify what the real issue is; 2, address it directly; 3, align on shared goals; 4, build accountability; and 5, reinforce and follow up. So, what you need to understand when you address the real issue. What do I mean by addressing the real issue? And for those of you who are listening, you can't see the image that I have on screen, but I have an image of an iceberg, and it's a cut image or a sliced image where you can see the water below and the iceberg up top, and the tip of the iceberg is huge. The iceberg that you can see on the surface is huge. But really, beneath the surface, it's even larger. It expands further. Its reach is further. And if you think about what happened, unfortunately, with the Titanic, the underestimation of the size of the conflict or the problem or the iceberg caused them to misgauge the distance, the reach of the challenge or the problem. And it ended up having catastrophic effects. And I know that might sound like I'm being really dramatic by using the Titanic, but it's important for you to understand that when you see the manifestation of the problem or the symptom, there's really 99.9 times out of 100% of the time, there's something that is going on beneath the surface. So, asking open-ended questions like, what challenges are preventing us from working effectively together? What that does is that allows the person to open up and have the conversation, allows them to actually share more than what you're asking. And I remember I worked with a leader, and they had a list of questions, and the questions were so narrow that it didn't lend room for insight and to find out what really was going on. And when we changed that approach, what we found that the information that he got from those interviews were more telling than he realized. And he redirected his approach, and the resolution came out that people were surprised that he was as approachable as he was, and that they were able to open up their open up their ideas and have themselves really share. So the second thing is observe the behavior. Are employees disengaged? Is there tension? And don't make assumptions about that. Just observe. Are people disengaged? Is there tension? And when you have your conversations, leave that open-ended so that you can really get to the source. Because if you ask narrow questions, you will be pointed in one direction that may or may not really be the source. It may just be the tip of the iceberg. And third, use active listening techniques. When working with emotional intelligence, you know that you need to kind of dial back and let people talk, and not just talk so that you can respond, but to actually listen. And I remind myself that often, especially if there are high emotions involved, or if you're feeling threatened, or if you struggle with feeling that you've been misrepresented, you need to make sure that you're actively listening to understand, and listening to hear their side. Step 2, address the issue directly. Schedule a private, neutral conversation. Again, and you may need to prepare. Like I said, if you have some emotion tied to it, or if there's emotion tied to it, you want to schedule a place that seems non-threatening. You want to avoid accusation and blame statements, and say things like, you did this, but lead with I statements. I noticed our meetings have been tense. I noticed our conversations have been short. I noticed our interactions have seemed awkward. What's your perspective? And like I said, prepare and practice ahead of time so that you don't come off in a way that is accusatory and may put them on the defensive. But you want to get them to open up, and you want to focus on facts instead of emotions, and it will carry you a long way, I guarantee you. Step 3, align on shared goals. A lot of times these can blow out of proportion, and you miss the why. You miss where you're going. You miss things that you actually have in common. And the couple of things that you may have that are different may actually be fewer than the things that you have in common. So if you reaffirm, what is the company doing? What are our objectives? What is the project lending itself to? Where are we going? And then define success for both parties. And that's whether it's you and another person, or two parties that you're having this open conversation with. You find out, what does success look like for the two parties, the parties involved, and define that and find common ground. Okay, we both want the project to succeed. Where can we agree? Where can we align? How do we move forward? And that's gold. I tell you, it really is gold. When you look at the fact that the bottom line is nobody really wants the project to fail. Nobody really is looking to see things go under. In fact, the top 10 common causes of conflict in the workplace, due to a Gallup, I got this from a Gallup study done in November 6th, 2023. Top 10 common causes of conflict in the workplace: communication, personality differences, resource scarcity, resistance to change. And I want to put a pin here. Right now in our country, in our organizations, we are going through a lot of change. Leaders I've talked to are saying we have to get work done, and people are fearful for their jobs, fearful for their job security, and they may be resistant to change. So it's tough to not understand that and to try to put a Band-Aid on something when people are really just afraid. So there could be resistance to change, workplace politics. We know how that goes. Misunderstanding. And if you never really address a misunderstanding, how long do you let it go? How long do you let the conflict go unresolved? And how much productivity do you choose to lose because you fail to address the misunderstanding or get to the bottom of it? Unclear responsibilities, when people don't know what they're supposed to be doing, if the goals are ambiguous, and what are we doing here? Where are we going? And I've seen that in projects where there are multiple stakeholders and different goals, or different ideas, different budgets, different different end results, it's important to make sure that those goals are not ambiguous and that they're communicated clearly. Sometimes bullying can happen, and I hate to see it in the workplace, but it happens, and people don't feel open to share. They don't feel safe, and it's important that you are able to resolve those in a way, because it can lead to work-related stress. And so those are the top 10, that was found by that Gallup poll, for conflict. And all of those are resolvable. All of those, with the hard conversation, the courageous conversation, can help you move through that. So the next step, step 4, we already talked through aligning shared goals. Step 4 is building accountability. It's important to assign clear responsibilities after the discussion. And so if trust has been fractured, if there's been some damage or some frustration, you may have to ramp up, but you want to assign clear responsibilities after the discussion. And you should leave that discussion with both of you agreeing that you want resolution, that you want to move forward. So when there are clear responsibilities, whether it's you and another person, or it's a conversation that you're mediating between two people, make sure that there are responsibilities that are assigned. Use project management tools to track how well they're going, and then conduct accountability check-ins. Talk to me about the one thing that you said you were going to do. Have you had any challenges? How successful have you been? What are your wins? What can I do to help? Things like that, conversations like that, help the project move along. It shows your investment in resolution and your desire for the desired outcome that you've agreed to in that meeting. And last but not least, reinforce and follow up. A lot of times we have great initiatives and it was a great conversation and it's left there. And it's important that we revisit. It's important that we check in, and it's important that we follow up to make sure there's progress. And we do it in a way that builds trust, it gains momentum. Celebrate wins publicly. Let's reiterate the commitments and follow up in meetings. Let's have some, and we talked about this before, that what makes a great leader, one of the skills is being transparent, being able to be vulnerable. And I know that there's limits to how transparent you can be with your team. Sometimes there are things that are off limits that are personal and private, but when you can be publicly vulnerable and publicly committed to rectifying situations, conflict, it builds trust in a more rapid speed, and it really helps the healing. If you can provide coaching as well, sometimes if you see someone struggling through the conflict, struggling through the resolution, and you lean in and you help provide coaching and you say, hey, I saw what you did. I saw you struggled there. Talk to me about what you were feeling. Talk to me about what you were thinking, and let them share, and then say, well, I saw your attempt and I want to applaud that. I want to celebrate that. And moving forward, and then give them some suggestions on how they can implement. Give them, and be willing to either suggest they bounce it off their practice, or they have dress rehearsal with a friend, a trusted colleague, or you can be that person. Say, when you realize that you're going to try that, you can work that out with me, or I suggest you find somebody that understands your intent, understands your heart, and is able to give you good, candid feedback, and you practice with them prior to, and you have them watch them in meetings. All of this helps a person gain confidence in this new skill, or this pivot, or this adjustment that they're making, to ensure that there's clarity, ensure that there are clear deliverables, ensure that they are doing their best to resolve conflict. And when you do things like that, you're getting back some money and productivity that your organization has lost. You are actually committing to conflict resolution. And as I stated in the beginning, that $350 billion are lost in American companies in the US. That's a lot of money to lose annually because of conflict. So get your time back, get your organization's money back, and get the productivity of your team back by accurately, completely investing in conflict resolution. Lean in. Even if it's uncomfortable, I know you can do it. Hey, you, I was thinking about you, and you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking as you begin to resolve conflict in a clear manner, you're going to watch your organization soar. And it's time for you to soar. Make sure if any of this content resonated with you, that you've commented, that you've shared, that you've liked the channel, and make sure that you subscribe so that when we send this incredible content and helpful content, that you are notified. I look forward to soaring with you.